After a year of unemployment, I think it's safe to say I don't ever want to go back. Welcome back to the channel. Tune in or ghost out. And why would I? I spent about 12,000 hours at a job that was over 5 years, and I've never felt the amount of fulfillment I do currently. I worked at a pretty cushy job. It wasn't manual labor. I was getting paid about $60,000 after taxes, and I've never been closer to walking in traffic than I did during that time in my life. There's something about clocking in that just requires you to hate the entire day. Once you mix in the coworkers and the managers you have to deal with, it's no wonder that 60% of America is unhappy with their job. I know for me, it's because it didn't meet any of the qualifications that I had in my mind. What started off as a job with a lot of promise quickly turned me into a wage slave. Don't want to hold any punches this video, because at the end of the day, it was my fault to stay at that job for 5 years. But taking the leap to leave showed me that I was scared of nothing the entire time. While these 10 months have not been easy, for the first month ever, I am profitable. While that might not seem like a big accomplishment, I started an unemployment fund for this exact cause. I didn't want to do that job, but I wanted to leave. And I knew I was leaving at a terrible time. The job market was unsteady. We were heading into a new year, and I honestly had no direction of what I wanted to do. I just know it didn't require me waking up at the ass crack of dawn, clocking in, and working a job that I couldn't stand. I say that so confidently now, but I wasted 5 years figuring that out. I've talked about my work experience prior to my broadcast job, the one that I left, where I worked as a pizza delivery boy, and honestly, looking back at it, I completely understand why I did waste 5 years. I went from a delivery boy to making $60K a year with no degree. I was lucky enough to skate into the position that I was in, and people trusted me to learn and pick it up, which I did, but it also came at a price. That was the ceiling of my career, was $60K. And in an economy where $60K doesn't go as far as it did even last year, I tried everything in my power in those 5 years to move up and get out of the position I was in, but I denied the reality in front of me. I had coworkers well into their 50s and 60s, getting ready for retirement, working the same entry-level position that I was in. The dark reality of broadcast engineering is that it's a dying industry. While we have streaming platforms now, I worked on the cable side of television. Yeah, the same cable television that people are switching away from every single year. I was in charge of sitting in a chair and making sure that you have television to watch. A job where I watch TV, that sounds amazing. Until you take into account that television is like 80% drug ads and the other 20% is political shows or reruns. The primetime television is until nighttime, and I worked morning shift. For a long time, I coped and said, well, I am very lucky to work at this easy of a job. I should just indulge in the safety and never do anything else. And it worked out well. I was making more than most of my friends at my age. I decided to not go to college, so shortly after my graduation from high school, I was making this much money and it was nice. But I realized that I was never truly happy in that position. I made more money than my counterparts at my age, but I also spent and chased more things than people my age. I remember falling in love with a hobby every other week just to fill the void of purpose that I felt. My everyday work wasn't meaningful, so I tried to find meaning in every other little thing in my life. For some people, they can leave work at home and just go back to home. But when you feel work take more of your time and reward you less as the time goes on, there's this sinking feeling in your stomach when you realize that you're a replaceable tool and not really a vital part of the company you work at. The managers will paint fake stories of unity, but after spending enough time with the people around you, you realize most people are cutthroat and would throw you under the bus in a heartbeat. I always ask myself if I really wasted my time during that part of my life, and looking back at it now, I would 100% say yes. It's not a great feeling, but it's something I have to admit. I started that job in 2019. I stuck with that job for 5 years. Do you know what I missed out on? I worked a job that I hated when I could have been cashing out unemployment during COVID. Not saying that was the right thing to do, but people were cashing out unemployment, traveling the world while I was working a job I hated just because I thought it would get me further in the long run. I remember how much they gaslit us about getting raises, keeping up with inflation, telling us things like, oh, you know, if you help us through COVID, it'll pay off in the long run, just to be constantly turned around whenever I asked to move up in the company. Having that job literally felt like a humiliation ritual. But even with all that, I somehow chose to stay. The thing that made me leave and really had me questioning my view on what I wanted next in my life was the conversation I had with my coworker Mark. I've touched on this before, but Mark was actually a really cool guy. He started his career journey in the 1980s in radio, starting off as an intern, later going on to be the lead mic on one of his favorite stations, and he would just spend all his time interviewing musicians and traveling the world for music events. That was until the rise of cable television. And around the 2000s, he started working at the job that me and him were currently at. He told me that when he made that switch from radio to television, the passion that he had for work just completely died with it. One thing he regretted the most was starting his own radio show. He mentioned having the opportunity before, but being so caught up in what he had going on that he never took the idea seriously, always assuming that the radio station would just be around. The way he told me that that was his biggest regret never left my mind. Mark at that age wasn't who he was when he was 20. You could tell life took a huge toll on him, even in the way he would talk about his kids or his wife. Always seemed like everything just happened to him, and he never was really in the driver's seat of what he chose to do. He said, I was just getting by. He's like, I ended up making all these choices and I had to work a 9 to 5. But if I could go back and change my decisions, I'd be that independent talk show radio host. He said, I may have not succeeded, but now I live with the regret of never knowing. This was said 1 year prior to me leaving. And after me and Mark had that conversation, that entire year was just me planning my exit. I saved up what I could, but I rationalized with myself that even if I didn't have the goal by the end of the time, I was still going to leave anyway. My choice to leave wasn't some guaranteed shot to make it work. I have a bad habit of starting things and dropping them, and that's what stopped me from making a lot of moves my entire life. I kind of always knew about myself that I needed a lot of drive to do something. So because of that, I've always tried to take safer routes that require me just to take routine rather than have drive. And this benefited me for a while until it didn't. Once I got to that point of routine, I always craved passion. I don't like to sugarcoat things for myself. I usually like to be brutally honest and go with the reality that I paint, but something about this decision told me to be delusional for once. I can aim for the stars and land on the moon, or I can do nothing and be a mark. Yeah, he has a retirement fund, but was it worth it? So I left. I was scared. I didn't know what was next, and truly, I didn't care what was next. For me, I crossed the biggest hurdle, and that was putting enough trust in myself to do something. The reason I hated my 9 to 5 wasn't because it was a 9 to 5. I told you, I had it easy compared to a lot of people. I will never complain about my job in the light of like a construction worker. They have it harder than me, and I know that. But this idea of comfort kind of led me into wage slavery. I put a dependence on this job that I really should not have. My emotions, my purpose, my well-being shouldn't be defined by a career. It should be defined by the person that I am. And I think I realized the more I worked this job, the more toxic of a person I became. I constantly had a bad temper. I was always having headaches and I craved sleep more than ever. When you're keeping up with such an unsustainable lifestyle, it's easy to see the toll it takes on you. But you only notice the lasting effect once you take a step back. Once I left the job, it wasn't all sunshine and roses. It was a lot of mental battles. Just like any other unemployed male, especially at this age, emotions hit, feelings hit, and perspective was really hard to grasp. Did I just waste 5 years of my life? What could I have done with those 12,000 hours that I spent giving to someone else? But I realized that I could keep asking questions and I can get stuck in fear. I can do the same thing I did when I was employed, or I can be delusional as hell and put it all on red and see what gives way first. Will I get tired of betting on myself and return back to 9 to 5 lifestyle? Or will I keep rolling the dice until I get a win? Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I made this channel, I was pretty ready to go back to a 9 to 5. That look of uncertainty from the people around me on what I was gonna do or what I was doing, coupled with a uncertain job market, I probably would have jumped at the opportunity to have a job in June. But I don't know. Maybe I got lucky that nobody was hiring, and now that there's more people than jobs, it's even harder. But I decided to stick it out a little bit longer, and I can say for the first month, I'm actually profitable. This isn't from a 9 to 5. This is from a bunch of random side hustles. I've talked about them on the channel before and YouTube now. I was able to put money into my investment accounts, pay my bills, and have money left over. I didn't spend the extra money, but for the first time in a long time, I had money that wasn't coming out of my savings. Many people will laugh that it took me 10 months to become profitable on my own, but it's nothing but smiles on my face because that was 10 months of growth that I would have never experienced if I chose safety. I wish I was like some people who could do both, but I realized I wasn't. This video is not to advocate you leaving your position. Honestly, I don't think that would be a good idea, and I don't think it was a good idea when I did it, but it was a leap of faith. It was a test of courage, and I think I passed it. And even if I wasn't profitable this month, I still would have passed it. I know this video is about how I don't want to go back to a job or 9 to 5, but could I see myself doing it in the future? Yeah, if I have to. I'm never bigger than the program. But now I know what my goals are, and it's to get the hell out of there as soon as possible. Whether that's through investment, side hustles, putting it all on red, living the life of a worker is not a sustainable sustainable thing. And realizing a reality where I can contribute to society and also be self-sufficient is nice. This might be delusion, but I'd rather give into this than whatever the 9-to-5 lifestyle is promoting. I'm tired of being under the thumb of a corporation. If I fail, I fail, but I don't want to get a letter telling me that I was laid off when that's all I had. Even if this doesn't go as far as I want it to, diversifying my income sources has always been a positive, and it took me taking one of the biggest leaps of my life to understand and actually be proactive on that. If you take anything away from this video, it's to bet on yourself 100% of the time. Safety is good, but it kills progress in ways that you never see. What are your true ambitions? What are your goals? And what does a happy life actually look to you? I've said it before and I'll say it again. The more you chase a normal life that's written out and predestined for you, the more upset you'll be when the prize that you get is not the one that you want. But what do I know? I'm just a guy playing video games. If you agree or disagree, let me know down below in the comments. I do read the comments. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to join the thread. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Until next time.
Transmission complete. Signal terminating. This is Ghost Thread, signing off.